Hello and welcome back to my devlog series. To quickly recap, in the last episode I made some basic movement, a room with working doors and an enemy. On top of that I made the player able to interact with the doors with this little animation, but I completely forgot to mention it in the last video, even though it's clearly visible. You might ask, why the hell would you do that? Yes, you could ask that. If you would do that, I would kinda look like an idiot, so please just don't. Back to the game though. Unfortunately for our Morpheus out here, he's looking kinda dead inside, you know what I mean? So we gotta make this guy move a little, because that's usually what enemies do. Now, in the last episode I mentioned the problem. I have never done any pathfinding before. It's extremely easy to make an object move towards another object, that's some pretty simple math really. I've made it several times in my previous games, for example, when an enemy shoots the player or a slime is about to jump on you. This time, however, enemies have to actively avoid walls, because if they don't, well that happens. But before I do that, I also need to make a walking animation for the enemy. Okay, now we just need to make him actually move, because now he can only try to moonwalk like this. And don't take me wrong, I actually like moonwalking, but it's not really the part of the game. Okay, so pathfinding. What does pathfinding mean? To me, it means that we can find a way from point A to point B for an object without any collisions on the way. You probably do it all the time without thinking about it. I mean, where was the last time you hit a wall instead of walking past it? Me? When was the last time it happened to me? Hey, can we please stop asking these questions? They are really uncomfortable to me. Thanks! Back to the pathfinding now. My first approach for this was to create a function that would take an object and the destination as an input and output the list of steps that the object would have to make it to the other side. I made several iterations of this and they all had the same problem, complexity. The code itself wasn't the most complicated, but it was surely running really bad. It was slow. Now, remember that every time the player moves, the enemies should adjust their path to the current position of the player. This means that if the code isn't optimized, the game is going to lag a lot, essentially turning it from a title that runs in 250 FPS to a PowerPoint presentation, and I really don't want to do that. So after making like 7 different versions of this idea and seeing that they all suck when I just add 3 enemies and the whole thing just explode, I decided to rethink the whole idea. And this is where the math helped me a lot. In math there is an easy way to describe a straight line with just an equation. You can also specify the starting and ending point of this line, to make it a section. Now, since this is an equation, if we have 2 lines, we can simply check if they intersect, just by looking if there is a solution for both of them in the same time. This led me to creating a much smoother pathfinding algorithm. Let me explain. First, you make a line between the corners of the object, which is our enemy, and the desired destination. Then, you make a line for each side of all collidable objects. Once you have all these lines, you check if the path lines you drew collide with any collidable line. If they do, move the object to the place where they do. After that, the object attempts to make it to the corners of the object it just collided with. Then, just repeat the whole process until you reach the destination. Voila! Piece of cake. But not a pancake, since this would fall under cannibalism, and I'm a family-friendly channel. YouTube, please notice me. But anyway, surprisingly enough, this worked. It was also a lot less demanding than the last algorithms. So I applied this, and now enemies can walk. I also made it so that enemies can open doors. Now there is only one thing that I need to add. You see, as for now, the enemy always knows where you are. So you can basically own your mind business and then, out of thin air... Here's Johnny! Fortunately, fixing this was a lot easier than the pathfinding. To make sure that the enemy can see the player, I just make a straight line between them and test if it's obstructed by anything. I also make sure that the player isn't too far, and the enemy is looking in the general direction of the player. And with all of that, our enemy movement is done. Now for this to be a behavior and not just chasing the player, I made it so that by default the enemies walk between predefined points on the map. When they spot the player, they run to the last place where they saw him. If they arrive to the place but lose the player from their eyes, they'll stay there for a while and then return to walking around the points. And I think that's it. That's the behavior, at least for now. Now, I want all of you to know that while I record this video in like 10 hours or so, the whole process of making this took me approximately 2 months. So, it wasn't a piece of bread. With that being said, that's it for today's devlog. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Remember to stick around if you don't want to miss my next devlog. I will see you all next time. Bye!